Hey there, viewers. This case just got darker. The prosecution's sealed files might hide more than anyone expected. Whispers of infections, secret clinic records, and a rumored list of celebrities caught up in Diddy's wildest nights. Whether it's fact or gossip, the internet's already exploding, and nobody's safe from the speculation. Chapter 1. The Whisper That Turned into a Bombshell. I remember the first time I heard it. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't in some big breaking news headline. It was in a thread online, late at night, when I was scrolling just to pass the time. Someone had written that the prosecutors working on Diddy's case weren't just looking into the usual things, like money laundering or trafficking, but that they had come across something darker, something that didn't even make sense at first. The post said there were sealed documents, sealed so tightly that even court reporters could only hint at what was inside, and what they hinted at was terrifying. They said it had to do with medical tests, with STD reports, with names of people that weren't supposed to be part of the story, names of celebrities who might have gotten infected at Diddy's parties. At first, I thought it was ridiculous. Another rumor, another exaggeration. But then I saw how people reacted. It spread like wildfire. Because once you put the idea out there, that there's a secret list of 6 celebrities tied to Diddy, people can't stop thinking about it. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The thought alone is enough to drive people mad with curiosity. Who could be on that list? Who was careless enough or unlucky enough to end up caught in the mess? The whispers grew. Reporters said investigators hadn't just grabbed computers and hard drives when they raided his homes. They said boxes of files were taken too. Medical files, clinic receipts, even kits used for drugging people, bags of IV fluids, and sealed evidence marked with the names of private testing facilities. The picture people painted was that prosecutors had walked out not just with proof of parties and freak-offs, but with evidence of infections that might link back to them. And if that's true, then the case wasn't just about abuse or trafficking anymore. It was about contamination, about people being permanently marked by whatever went down behind those closed doors. The idea of a list made everyone paranoid. Social media blew up overnight. People were posting what-ifs, screenshots, blurry clips, anything they could dig up that might tie a celebrity to one of those nights. Some users started pulling old photos of famous rappers hanging out at Diddy's house, zooming in on their faces as if that alone proved they were guilty of something. Others brought up NBA stars who were rumored to be close to him, tossing their names into the mix like tossing gasoline on a fire. And then came the actors, the crossover crowd who everyone knew had brushed shoulders with Diddy at award shows, charity galas, after parties. Suddenly it wasn't just about his circle. It was about Hollywood, about music, about sports. The thing is, once that kind of rumor takes off, you can't control it. Even if you try to correct it, even if you say, hey, there's no proof, it doesn't matter. People want it to be true because the idea of it being true is more exciting than the silence of reality. That's how it felt watching the frenzy. No one cared about the evidence being sealed. They only cared about filling in the blanks themselves. For me, it was surreal. I'm not some insider. I don't know prosecutors or celebrities. I'm just someone who watches from the outside, who sees how quickly whispers turn into stories. And when those whispers have the word infection attached to them, it's different. It feels heavier, because infection doesn't just go away. It lingers. It spreads. It ruins trust. It ruins health. It ruins lives. If prosecutors really had names, if they really had files proving that celebrities caught something from these parties, then it meant that Diddy's scandal wasn't just personal. It was contagious. I scrolled through comments for hours, reading strangers piece together conspiracy boards like amateur detectives. Some swore that prosecutors would never expose the list publicly, because the backlash would shake entire industries. Others thought leaks would come out in small drops, through anonymous tips to blogs, maybe through hacked files sold to tabloids. Then there were the dramatic ones, the ones who swore they had sources, telling them that A-list rappers were panicking, that NBA players were suddenly more private, that actors had stopped showing up to certain public events. All of it mixed together until you couldn't tell what was truth and what was fantasy. But it didn't matter, because by then everyone was hooked on the idea of the list. What scared people most wasn't just who might be on it. It was how deep it could go. If one person at a party was infected, then anyone they were with could be infected too. And if those people went on to be with others, the chain doesn't stop. The infection spreads outward like ripples in water. People started talking about a map, an invisible web of connections that tied dozens of famous names together. Not just singers, not just athletes, but producers, managers, assistants, the people in the background who nobody ever talks about. Suddenly, the whole industry looked like it could be crawling with secrets. I thought about how weird it is, how fragile reputations are when you tie them to disease. No one wants their name linked to an infection. It's not like being accused of cheating or lying. This is different. Once people think you're sick, that thought never leaves them. Even if you prove otherwise, the stain stays. And that's why the rumor of the list hit so hard. It wasn't just a headline, it was a scarlet letter waiting to be revealed. The news anchors didn't touch it at first. Too risky, too dangerous. They stuck to what they could confirm: the raids, the lawsuits, the testimonies. But in the corners of the internet, the rumor had already grown into a monster. Memes popped up. Threads called "Guess Who's on the List" stretched for hundreds of comments. Some users created fake documents just to see how far they'd spread. And they spread far, because no one wanted to believe they were fake. Everyone wanted the thrill of thinking they were getting a glimpse of forbidden truth. Even I couldn't stop checking. Every morning I'd refresh the threads, looking to see if new names popped up. I didn't even believe half of it, but I still read it, because it felt like standing on the edge of something huge. Like one day soon the bomb would drop, and the names would come out for real. The worst part was the silence of the celebrities themselves. Not one of the people rumored to be connected to Diddy said anything. No denials, no statements, just silence. And silence, in a storm like this, feels like guilt. People online started saying, if they're innocent, why aren't they clearing their names? But maybe they thought staying quiet was safer. Maybe they thought speaking would make it worse. Still, the silence only fueled the fire. I can't tell you what the truth is. All I know is what the whispers said, what the comments repeated, what the screenshots showed. That prosecutors had something sealed away, something tied to health records and medical tests, something that could ruin careers if it ever saw the light of day. It might all be rumor. It might all be exaggerated. But once the idea was out there, it became real in its own way. Because it's not just about trafficking anymore. Not just about freak-offs. It's about people asking the scariest question of all. Who got sick, and how deep does this go? Chapter 2. Inside the freak-off machine.
I didn't understand what they meant by freak-offs at first. It sounded like some rumor blown out of proportion. One of those phrases invented online to make something sound worse than it is. But when I started reading through the court filings and the testimonies, I realized that the name didn't even come close to capturing what these parties really were. Calling them parties feels wrong too. That word makes you think of music and laughter, drinks and friends. This wasn't that. This was something else entirely. Something organized, mechanical.
Like an operation running on a schedule. The prosecution painted it like a machine, one with Diddy at the center pulling every lever. They described these marathons where people barely slept for days, where hotel rooms turned into something closer to medical labs than party spaces. There were IV bags hanging on racks in corners, ready to keep people conscious when their bodies couldn't take it anymore. Hotel staff later testified that they saw entire carts wheeled in, stacked with fluids and injection kits, not for emergencies, but to keep the rhythm going. They said hundreds of bottles of baby oil were ordered in bulk, so many that one investigator said the invoices looked like someone was stocking a warehouse. And in every space, cameras, everywhere, hidden in vents disguised in speakers, tucked behind mirrored walls. It wasn't just the image of excess that shocked me. It was how clinical it all sounded. When you read about a party, you imagine chaos, people making their own choices, doing whatever they want. But this didn't sound like that. It sounded choreographed. There were workers who said they were given assignments told when to bring supplies, when to clear the rooms, when to refill whatever was running low. And when it was over, those same workers had to clean up the aftermath, sweeping away the evidence before anyone outside ever saw it. One of the things that stayed with me was how they described what hazardous waste meant in this context. It wasn't just empty bottles or stained sheets. They used gloves, masks, special bags. Some workers said they weren't even told what they were handling, just that it needed to be disposed of discreetly, taken to private contractors instead of regular hotel bins. If that's true, then prosecutors weren't exaggerating when they connected these events to health risks. It wasn't just scandalous behavior happening there. It was risky behavior, with consequences no one was talking about at the time. And then there was Cassie's testimony. I remember reading it the first time and having to stop halfway through. Everyone talks about the emotional toll, the abuse, the manipulation, and all of that's true. But buried in the details, in the parts people skim over, are descriptions of what it did to her body. She talked about recurring infections, sores that wouldn't heal, bruises layered over bruises. She described waking up sick over and over and being pressured back into situations her body couldn't handle. She said there were nights where she begged to rest and was told no, that there were people waiting, plans already set, cameras already rolling. For me, that's when the list started making more sense. It wasn't just about rumors of wild nights anymore. There were lawsuits saying these weren't safe environments. There were testimonies where people said they were pushed past their limits without protection, where their consent didn't seem to matter once they walked into those rooms. And if that's what prosecutors are looking at, if they've got evidence from clinics or private testing facilities showing patterns of infections tied back to these events, then the rumors about a sealed list don't feel as far-fetched as they sound. Of course, that's when the gossip started layering itself on top of the facts. Insiders, or at least people claiming to be, said that condoms were almost never used. Some said it was part of the culture of these parties, skin to skin only, as they called it, like it was a rule you couldn't argue against. Whether or not those rules were ever spoken out loud, people online took that detail and ran with it. Bloggers connected it to infection risks. They said this was why certain celebrities were suddenly flying to private clinics overseas. They posted blurry photos of famous faces walking into discreet testing centers and wrote captions like, "Guess why they're here." I kept thinking about those workers, though. The ones who said they had to clean up afterward. Some of them talked about seeing things they didn't understand at the time. Rashes, bleeding, people staggering out of rooms half-conscious. One even said they were warned never to talk about what they saw, that their jobs would vanish if they spoke up. Imagine watching all of that unfold night after night, and then having to act like it never happened once the sun came up. The tabloids ate up every detail they could find. Articles started connecting Cassie's testimony to the broader story, suggesting her infections were just one example out of many. They quoted anonymous friends who said she wasn't the only one who left those nights with lasting damage. Some even claimed they'd seen private correspondence between celebrities and doctors, like frantic texts asking for results to be expedited, prescriptions called in under fake names. None of it was confirmed, but that didn't matter anymore. The narrative was set. Something about those parties left people more than just emotionally scarred. And when bloggers speculated that this was how the infection list became part of the federal investigation, people believed it. If prosecutors had seized testing records or pulled files from private labs, then those names weren't just rumors anymore. They were evidence. The only thing stopping the public from seeing them was the seal. That's what made the hysteria so intense. The idea that the names were out there, locked in a file cabinet somewhere, waiting to ruin everything when the time came. I tried to imagine what it must have been like inside one of those rooms. The lights, the cameras, the pressure. Drugs to numb you, drinks to blur your judgment, the constant awareness that someone was recording. If half of what Cassie said is true, there wasn't much choice involved at all. And without choice, there isn't much chance for safety. When you mix that kind of environment, where people are being pushed, where protection isn't prioritized, where exhaustion wears you down, it's almost impossible to believe infections wouldn't happen. That's the part people don't want to say out loud, but everyone knows deep down. You don't need conspiracies or secret files to understand why the risks would be sky high. Still, the rumors have a way of making it all sound even darker. Some claimed there were specific celebrities already panicking behind the scenes, terrified of being outed if the names ever leaked. Others said private doctors were quietly advising their clients to prepare statements just in case. One gossip blog even claimed there was tension between certain artists because people didn't want to collaborate with anyone rumored to have been on the list. It's strange how quickly public opinion can shift once health becomes part of the story. People who defended Diddy when it was just parties started pulling back when infections got mentioned. Fans who laughed off the freak-off rumors suddenly started asking harder questions, not just about him, but about everyone who was there, everyone who might have known and stayed silent. I think that's what made this chapter of the story so disturbing for me. It's not just about excess or exploitation anymore. It's about what happens when you mix that with neglect, when safety isn't even an afterthought. You start realizing how fragile everything is, how one night can ripple out into consequences that last for years. People always say scandals fade, that news cycles move on. But infections don't fade. They don't move on. If there really is a list, if prosecutors really have files tying specific names to results, that's not something you can bury forever. Even if it never comes out officially, someone will talk. Someone always talks. And when that happens, the fallout won't stop at Diddy. It'll hit everyone who ever set foot in those rooms. Every time I go back and reread Cassie's testimony, I notice something new, something small, like a throwaway line about waking up in pain or being rushed to see a doctor she didn't even know. Those little details stick. They make everything feel less like gossip and more like a puzzle we're only starting to put together. And it's not a comfortable feeling, knowing that the missing pieces might include some of the biggest names in music, sports, and Hollywood. When I think about it now, I understand why people are obsessed with the idea of the list. It's not just curiosity. It's fear. Fear of realizing how unsafe the world behind the red carpets really is. Fear of finding out that the people we admire might be carrying secrets they can never admit. Fear of knowing that whatever happened in those hotel rooms didn't stay there, that it might have followed people home in ways you can't undo. That's why the whispers haven't stopped. They won't stop until someone finally opens those files. Chapter 3. The first names to leak. I wish I could say I was surprised when the first names started popping up online, but I wasn't. It was bound to happen. Once the whispers about a sealed infection list started spreading, people were going to fill in the blanks themselves. That's how it always goes. It didn't matter that prosecutors hadn't said anything, or that nothing was confirmed. People were impatient. They didn't want to wait for trials or statements or facts. They wanted names, and the internet gave them names. It started with young Miami. Out of nowhere, screenshots began circulating claiming she had accused Diddy privately of infecting her. They weren't from any official source. Just blurry photos of messages people swore were leaked from a friend of a friend. I saw one post claiming she'd told her inner circle she tested positive for something after being with him. But when I tried to track it back, every link led to another rumor site, another repost, another claim without proof. Still, it didn't matter. Once those screenshots hit Twitter, they exploded. Thousands of retweets in hours. People started tagging her, demanding answers, dissecting old photos of them together like detectives trying to solve a crime. Then came the YouTube videos, titles screaming in all caps. Prosecution hides Diddy's infection list. Diddy passed something to industry peers since 2011. Who else knew? You'd think people would dismiss them. But millions of views later, you realize they don't. These channels take pieces of gossip, stitch them together with ominous music, and turn them into something that feels believable, even when it isn't. They show old clips of Diddy hugging artists backstage, sitting courtside with athletes, whispering into someone's ear at an award show. And they frame it like each moment is evidence of a bigger conspiracy, and people eat it up because deep down, they want it to be real. Jay-Z and Beyoncé's names didn't take long to get dragged in again either. There'd already been that lawsuit floating around where they were allegedly present during one of Diddy's humiliations. The story about the man in the mask, walking around like a prop while cameras rolled and everyone watched. No one ever proved they were there, but the rumor was enough to pull them into the storm again. Suddenly, their silence became suspicious. People started re-watching old interviews, pulling quotes out of context, saying Beyoncé looked nervous when Diddy's name came up, saying Jay-Z had distanced himself publicly, but kept ties behind the scenes. It was wild how fast people turned speculation into certainty. And then, somehow, LeBron James got caught in it too. It started after Aaron Rodgers made those comments on Joe Rogan's podcast about so many powerful people staying quiet, about how celebrities like LeBron were part of a culture that protected Diddy, even when everyone knew what was going on. Rodgers never actually accused LeBron of anything directly, but online that didn't matter. Gossip blogs grabbed his name and plastered it into headlines anyway. Suddenly, people were pointing out every photo of LeBron at one of Diddy's parties, every casual interaction, spinning it into something darker. It was the same formula every time. Find a celebrity who's ever been in the same room as Diddy, pull up an old picture, throw it into a thread with a cryptic caption like, "Make it make sense," and watch the speculation catch fire. I scrolled through all of it, and the thing that struck me wasn't how wild the claims were, but how easily people believe them. You'd think that without proof, people would hesitate, but it was the opposite. They wanted the drama. They wanted to believe their favorite celebrities had been caught up in something messy, something dangerous. And maybe, deep down, they wanted to see powerful people taken down a notch, even if it was just in the court of public opinion. The silence from the celebrities themselves only made it worse. Not one of them said anything. Young Miami didn't respond to the screenshots. Jay-Z and Beyoncé stayed quiet. LeBron ignored the blogs entirely. No statements, no interviews, no lawyers firing off denials, nothing. And online, silence is its own kind of confession. Fans started saying things like, if this wasn't true, they'd be shutting it down immediately. Every day they didn't speak became another reason to believe the whispers. It got to the point where people started making lists of their own. Reddit threads, TikTok slideshows, even podcasts ranking celebrities by likelihood of being on the list. None of it based on facts, just vibes, gossip, and proximity. If someone had ever been photographed at one of Diddy's parties, they were automatically suspicious. If someone had ever defended him publicly, they were definitely hiding something. It didn't matter how flimsy the connection was. If your name ended up in those conversations, the damage was done. I saw one thread where someone claimed they had inside info about a secret group chat filled with celebrities panicking about the potential leaks. They said lawyers were scrambling, NDAs were being rewritten, and private doctors were preparing for fallout. There was no proof, of course, but the comments treated it like gospel. People were naming names, accusing actors, rappers, athletes, even TV hosts of being part of this invisible web. The story had outgrown reality. It wasn't about what prosecutors actually had anymore. It was about what people imagined was hiding behind those sealed files. That's what scared me the most. The rumors were powerful because they didn't need evidence. They only needed the possibility of being true. All it took was one suggestion, one blurry screenshot, one vague post claiming, "Sources confirm," and suddenly millions of people believed they knew the truth. And maybe that's why the silence felt so loud. Not a single A-list celebrity connected to Diddy has gone on record condemning him since the raids. Not one. Even as lawsuits pile up and testimonies come out, there's this wall of quiet around the people who used to call him a friend. Fans notice that kind of thing. They wonder why no one's speaking up, why no one's drawing a line between themselves and him. And the longer that silence lasts, the more people start connecting dots that may not even exist. I think that's why this whole thing feels so different from other scandals. It's not just about what happened, it's about what might have happened. It's about people looking at their favorite celebrities and wondering if they were exposed, if they're carrying secrets they can't ever talk about. It's about the uncertainty of it all, the not knowing. Every time a new name trends, the cycle starts again. Someone posts an old photo, someone else claims to have receipts. Gossip accounts go into overdrive, and within hours, millions of people are convinced another star is on the list. Then a few days pass, nothing's confirmed, and people move on, until the next name drops. It's like watching a fire spread in slow motion, one spark at a time, and there's no way to put it out because nobody actually knows what's true. I keep thinking about how fragile trust is, how quickly it disappears when whispers turn into headlines. All it takes is the suggestion of being on that list, and suddenly everything changes. You can't post a selfie without someone commenting, "Test results came back yet?" You can't show up to an event without trending for the wrong reasons. Even if it isn't true, the suspicion lingers. That's what makes this rumor so dangerous. It doesn't matter whether prosecutors ever confirm anything. The fear is enough. The idea of the list is enough. And until someone comes out and says exactly what's in those sealed documents, people are going to keep guessing. They're going to keep making their own lists, their own narratives, their own versions of the truth. Chapter 4. Jaguar Wright and the HIV allegations. I used to think Jaguar Wright was just one of those names you'd see in passing on gossip blogs. A flash of controversy, a wild claim here and there. The kind of person who always seemed to have a story about someone powerful, but never enough proof to back it up. At first, it felt easy to write her off. That's what most people did. But now, after everything that's come out, after the raids, the lawsuits, and the sealed files, I don't think anyone can dismiss her so easily anymore. Jaguar's been talking about Diddy for years, not just about parties or industry politics. She's been throwing out claims so wild that even the gossip world used to hesitate before repeating them. One of her most explosive ones was about his health. She said on video over and over again that Diddy's undetectable. That's the word she kept using, undetectable. Anyone who knows what that means heard it immediately. She was suggesting he's HIV positive, but on treatment that keeps his viral load low enough that it doesn't show up in tests. At first, people called it irresponsible, dangerous. They said she was trying to ruin reputations with no proof, just throwing accusations into the wind. But when the sealed documents became part of the conversation, when people started whispering about prosecutors finding medical files tied to private clinics, her words didn't sound so far-fetched anymore. Suddenly, the clips of her interviews were being reposted everywhere, resurfacing like old warnings people had ignored. I went back and watched them. She spoke with this kind of certainty, like someone who knew things she wasn't supposed to know. She talked about Diddy's lifestyle, about how the music industry itself is full of closets within closets. Her framing wasn't just about him. She hinted that the industry as a whole hides health secrets, that there are more people than anyone realizes living double lives, keeping quiet because exposure would ruin everything. It's easy to see why fans started connecting dots. Cassie's testimony had already mentioned recurring infections, sores, UTIs that wouldn't heal, doctor visits that never seemed to end. She never named anything specific, but the overlap was enough to make people suspicious. Suddenly, Jaguar's claims didn't exist in a vacuum anymore. They had context now, little echoes of her warnings buried inside verified court statements. The threads online started to shift. Instead of laughing at her, people began asking if she'd been onto something years before the raids even happened. I saw one comment that stuck with me. "Y'all called her crazy, but what if she was just early?" That became a recurring theme across social media. This idea that she wasn't making things up, she was just saying out loud what everyone else already whispered behind closed doors. It didn't stop with Diddy either. Once the idea of hidden health statuses entered the conversation, people started pulling up other old scandals. Rumors about artists outside of Diddy's circle suddenly got folded into the narrative. I saw names pop up from years ago. Celebrities accused of not disclosing their status to partners, actors rumored to have secret prescriptions under fake names, athletes who mysteriously disappeared from the spotlight for health reasons no one ever explained. Whether any of it was true didn't matter. The whispers all got tangled together into one big web of suspicion, And that's the thing about Jaguar Wright. She's not careful. She doesn't hedge. She doesn't leave room for doubt in the way she speaks. That's what made her easy to dismiss before, but it's also what makes her so dangerous now. She throws her claims like grenades, and once they're out there, you can't put them back. When you watch her interviews now, you can see why so many people think she's a professional spark plug for rumors. She knows exactly how to phrase things to set off a chain reaction online. She drops just enough detail to sound believable, but leaves enough blank space for the internet to fill in on its own. And when people start filling in those blanks with Cassie's infections, with sealed medical files, with whispers of private clinics, her words become something more than gossip. They start to sound like foreshadowing. I can't tell if she means to be malicious, or if she really believes everything she says. Maybe both. She talks like someone who's seen too much, someone carrying a weight she wants the world to share. Or maybe she just knows the game. She knows what people want to hear, knows how to keep herself relevant by staying one step ahead of the headlines. But no matter her intentions, the effect is the same. She's changed the way people talk about this case. Before, it was just about trafficking and freak-offs and power abuse. Now, there's this whole other layer. This sense that something invisible connects everyone who walked through those doors. Something you can't see in photos or court documents, but something people suspect is there. I've noticed the shift in tone when fans talk about celebrities rumored to have been at those parties. It's different now. It's not just judgment or curiosity anymore. It's fear. Fear that their favorites might have been exposed. Fear that they might have carried something out of those hotel rooms and into their real lives, into other relationships. Fear that the sealed files really do have names and results that could shatter entire careers if they ever get unsealed. And it's not like Jaguar Wright invented that fear. The idea of celebrities hiding HIV or other infections has been a cultural paranoia for decades. Long before Diddy's name was ever tied to this, there were whispers about artists living double lives, about non-disclosure settlements, about labels quietly protecting stars while keeping fans in the dark. In a way, Jaguar just poured gasoline on an old fire, reigniting something people were already primed to believe. What makes this moment different, though, is how close rumor and reality are starting to overlap. Every time a new lawsuit gets filed, every time another detail about those parties comes out, the space between her claims and the documented facts gets smaller. It's unsettling, like watching two separate rivers slowly merge into one, until you can't tell where the gossip ends and the truth begins. I think that's why people are listening to her differently now. It's not that they trust her completely. Most don't. But they can't ignore her anymore either. Even if half of what she says is made up, what if the other half isn't? What if prosecutors really did seize private clinic records? What if the sealed files aren't just about finances and trafficking, but about health, about names, about results? The uncertainty keeps people hooked. They replay her soundbites over and over, dissecting every word, trying to figure out how much she actually knows and how much she's just speculating. It's like she's become this strange middle point between verified facts and the wildest rumors, and no one knows where the line really is. Sometimes I wonder if that's the scariest part. Not knowing. Not knowing if Jaguar Wright is telling the truth. Not knowing what's really in those files. Not knowing who might have been exposed and who's perfectly fine. The possibility hangs over everything like a shadow, and it changes the way you look at everyone involved. Because if even one thing she said turns out to be true, then suddenly, a lot of other things people laughed off don't sound so crazy anymore. And that's when the whispers stop being whispers and start becoming something else entirely. Something heavier, something harder to ignore. And maybe that's why this part of the story feels so much bigger than just gossip now. It's not just about Diddy anymore. It's about trust, about secrets, about how much the public never really knows about the people they idolize. It's about wondering how much of what we call rumor is just reality waiting for the right moment to surface. Every time I see Jaguar's face in a new clip, I can't help but think about that. About how quickly everything shifts once the evidence starts catching up to the whispers. About how fragile the line between speculation and truth really is. And about how, for some people, it may already be too late to outrun what comes next. Chapter 5. The industry complicity problem. I think the moment everything shifted for me was when Aaron Rodgers went on Joe Rogan's podcast. Up until then, it had all been whispers, rumors, vague threads tying names together with blurry screenshots and unverified claims. But when Rodgers started talking, the conversation got louder and a little scarier. He didn't name anyone directly, but the implication was there. He called out so many powerful people for staying silent, for protecting Diddy even when, as he put it, everybody knew. And then he dropped LeBron James's name in passing, talking about A-list stars who partied with him, who were in those same rooms, who smiled for photos, and who, according to Rodgers, never said a word about what they saw. The clip went viral in hours. Thousands of comments poured in, dissecting every sentence, every pause, every sideways glance Rogan gave as Rodgers spoke. Fans latched onto the part about LeBron immediately. Some defended him, saying it was unfair to lump him into this mess just because he'd crossed paths with Diddy at parties and events. Others weren't so forgiving. They started pulling up old videos, courtside photos, charity galas, anything that proved he'd been in the same spaces. If he knew, they asked, why didn't he say anything? That became the bigger question. How much did people know and why did they stay silent? I think about it a lot, how celebrity culture works. When you're inside those circles, access is everything. Being invited to the right rooms, the right tables, the right parties. That's how you stay relevant. How you keep your name alive in an industry where careers can die overnight. And once you're inside, there's this unspoken rule. You don't talk about what you see. You don't cross the wrong people. You don't risk being cut out. It's not just fear. It's survival. Everyone wants access, and speaking up means losing it. That's what makes all of this feel so sinister now. Because if Rodgers is right, then a lot of people chose silence over safety. They kept showing up, kept smiling for cameras, kept hugging Diddy in public while knowing, or at least suspecting, what was happening behind the scenes. And if even a fraction of the infection rumors are true, then that silence wasn't just protecting reputations. It could have put lives at risk. There are stories floating around now, ones that sound like gossip, but hit a little too close to the whispers from court filings. Stories of celebrities running to private clinics after certain parties, rushing in late at night under fake names, paying cash for treatments and tests that never touch insurance records. Fans think these visits are part of what prosecutors have locked away in those sealed files. That the list isn't some spreadsheet of party attendees, but actual medical results tied to specific names. And if that's true, it explains the wall of silence even more. Because what happens if those results come out? I've seen the posts everywhere. If the feds have names of people who tested positive, why aren't they releasing them? It's become one of the most common refrains in comment sections, podcasts, even TikToks. Some people say prosecutors are protecting celebrities to avoid destroying careers unnecessarily. Others think it's something darker, that the government's shielding powerful people, keeping them insulated while everyone else speculates in the dark. There's a growing frustration underneath the gossip now. It's not just curiosity anymore. It's distrust. Fans feel like they're being kept out of the loop on purpose, like there's a whole other version of this story playing out behind closed doors, and they're only getting crumbs. That frustration fuels the obsession. Every little leak, every blurry rumor feels like a puzzle piece, even when it isn't. And yet, as much as people claim they want the truth, there's this quiet dread hanging over it. Because if the names ever do leak, the fallout will be instant and brutal, whether the infections are confirmed or not. Think about it. All it would take is one document, one anonymous drop to a gossip site, one screenshot passed around the right circles. A list of names, tied to test results, real or fake, it wouldn't matter. Once those names hit the internet, you can't unsee them. Careers would crumble overnight. Fans would turn. Sponsors would vanish. Collaborations would dry up. And the worst part is, none of it would have to be proven. That's the thing about health rumors. They stick. even if you come out the next day with paperwork proving you're fine. Some people will never believe you. Once your name's been linked to something like that, there's no going back. I think about the psychology of it, how the industry's built on silence, and how that silence is starting to backfire. If everyone had spoken up sooner, if even one big name had gone on record about what they saw, what they knew, maybe the rumors wouldn't have gotten this loud. Maybe people wouldn't be so eager to believe the worst. But they didn't. No one did. And so the silence speaks louder than any denial could. There's also the secrecy around those parties themselves. The NDAs, the confiscated phones, the locked doors, the security checks. Guests were told what they could and couldn't bring, warned that recording anything was forbidden. Some people even said security would scroll through your photos on the way out, deleting anything they didn't approve. That level of control tells you everything you need to know. They were building a world that wasn't supposed to exist outside those walls. But the problem with keeping secrets is that people always find ways to talk anyway. Former staffers, ex-bodyguards, assistants, they're the ones feeding these gossip blogs now. They talk about hidden rooms, private testing kits, backdoor deals with clinics to keep records off the books. And even if you assume half of them are lying, the other half sounds just plausible enough to make you wonder. That's why the infection rumors hit so hard. They make sense in a way that feels uncomfortably logical. You take rooms full of exhausted people, you strip away boundaries with drugs and pressure, you discourage protection, and you tell everyone to stay silent. What did they think was going to happen? Still, the scariest part isn't whether the rumors are true, it's the waiting. The feeling that somewhere in some file cabinet or encrypted drive, there are documents with answers, and knowing that if those documents ever get out, everything changes. Not just for Diddy, but for everyone who's ever been tied to him publicly. I keep thinking back to Aaron Rodgers, the way his words set this off in a bigger way. He wasn't even saying anything new. Fans had been hinting at this for months. But hearing someone with his platform speak it out loud made it real, in a way that gossip alone never could. It made people wonder what other celebrities are staying quiet. How many of them are sitting in interviews pretending they know nothing, while secretly praying the files stay sealed? Because if the names ever come out, there won't be any warning, no chance to prepare, no chance to get ahead of it. It'll just happen, and when it does, Hollywood won't look the same. Chapter 6. Prison and the Medical Rumor Mill. I should have known this was where things were heading. Once the raids happened and the lawsuits piled up, people stopped talking about whether Diddy was guilty and started talking about what prison would do to him. It didn't take long before the gossip videos showed up. Shaky thumbnails, bold red letters, voices pitched low to sound like they knew something no one else did. They all claimed the same thing, that Diddy already had prison wives lined up. At first I laughed it off. That's what you do when something sounds ridiculous. But then I started watching the videos, and it hit me how fast a ridiculous rumor can spiral into something bigger. These creators weren't just throwing ideas out there for fun. They were piecing together timelines, stitching together insider tips with grainy prison photos, and building entire narratives about what was supposedly happening behind bars. They claimed he was already sharing favors, forming alliances, and yes, lining up people for his own protection in exchange for intimacy. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but the numbers don't lie. Millions of views in a single week, comments stacked by the thousands. People weren't just laughing at these videos, they were believing them, building on them, adding their own pieces like a twisted kind of crowdsourced storytelling. Some said they had relatives on the inside who confirmed it. Others swore a guard friend leaked details about Diddy getting special treatment. The details changed depending on who you listened to, but the one thing that never shifted was the tone. Everyone spoke like it was inevitable, like this was just the next chapter of the story. And then the infection rumors followed. It wasn't enough to speculate about prison dynamics. People wanted to connect it back to everything else swirling around him. Threads popped up claiming that Diddy was already putting people at risk behind bars, that whatever infections he supposedly carried outside were now a problem inside too. It snowballed so fast that you'd think someone, somewhere, had proof. But of course, there was nothing. that didn't stop the clickbait machine. Within days, new videos popped up with titles like "Prison Doctors Confirm Diddy's Health Status" or "Leaked Reports Reveal Infection Outbreak Behind Bars." They'd use stock images of prison clinics, charts flashing across the screen, anonymous voices claiming to work in the system. No real names, no real sources, just the illusion of authority. And people bought it anyway. It reminded me of everything that was already happening outside those walls. The same way people dissected clinic rumors tied to freak-off parties, they were now doing it with prison gossip. It's like the moment his name became linked to infections, that narrative stuck to him everywhere he went. Inside or outside, it didn't matter. The assumption was always the same. I think part of it has to do with stigma. When you hear someone's name linked to HIV or other STDs, it does something to people. It taps into this deep cultural fear, not just of the illness itself, but of the shame attached to it. That's what makes these rumors so powerful. It's not about facts. It's about what people think infections represent. Vulnerability, recklessness, punishment. Some people even framed it like karma, saying things like, "Of course this is happening to him. Look at everything he's done." I saw so many comments like that. People talking as if infection was some kind of cosmic justice, like the universe was balancing scales in a way courts couldn't. Whether they believed the rumors or not didn't matter. It was satisfying for them to imagine it that way. That's when I started noticing something darker about the conversation. It wasn't just about Diddy anymore. Once you attach someone's name to something like this, it becomes a shorthand for every story you've ever heard. If one person believes he's carrying something, they start assuming everyone around him is too. It spreads like wildfire. Names of artists, athletes, even producers who've worked with him get caught up in the speculation. The infection narrative becomes bigger than one person. I saw entire comment sections where people were convinced this was the real reason prosecutors were being so secretive, not because they were protecting witnesses, but because the list was explosive enough to ruin entire industries if it ever went public. Some even claimed private medical records from prison would get folded into the evidence, tying back to old clinic visits outside. It didn't matter how unlikely that sounded. The more complicated the conspiracy, the more people believed it. The thing is, you can't disprove any of it. That's what makes these rumors so sticky. No one has access to private medical files. No one's allowed to confirm or deny diagnoses, so people just assume. Every gap in information becomes a space for imagination. One video claims he's undetectable. Another claims prison doctors confirmed it. Another swears that an outbreak's already started. And by the time you've scrolled past your third or fourth one, it all blurs together. Suddenly, you don't even remember which parts were supposed to be jokes and which parts were presented as real. I think that's why the infection rumors hit harder than anything else in this case. Scandals about parties and NDAs and abuse are awful, but they're also containable. You can point to specific people, specific nights, specific lawsuits. But when you bring infections into it, it stops being about isolated events and starts feeling endless. The idea that it could spread, that there's no way to know who's affected or who isn't, that fear sticks with people long after they close the app. And that's what fuels the gossip machine. Because nobody really wants to know the truth, not if it means facing how messy it all actually is. They want the thrill of imagining, the safety of keeping it just vague enough to believe without consequences. If someone came out tomorrow and said definitively, "There's nothing there," most people wouldn't even listen. The rumor's too big now. It's louder than any denial could ever be. In a way, it mirrors everything happening outside prison. The freak-off rumors, the alleged clinic visits, the whispers about sealed files. None of it's been confirmed, but it doesn't matter. Once a narrative takes hold, it becomes reality in people's minds. Diddy's name is permanently tied to these infections, whether anyone ever proves anything or not. Sometimes I wonder if that's the point. If this isn't even about truth anymore. If what people really want is a story, Something messy enough to make them feel like they're getting a glimpse behind the curtain, like they're finally seeing the world the way it really works. And nothing gives you that feeling faster than a rumor you're not supposed to know. That's what makes this impossible to stop. The whispers from outside feed into the whispers inside. Every unverified leak about prison doctors makes the freak-off rumors sound more believable. Every story about prison wives reinforces the idea that there's no line between Diddy's life then and now. And the more impossible it becomes to separate fact from fantasy, the more people lean into the fantasy instead. In the end, the truth almost doesn't matter. The damage is already done. Once you've been linked to something like this, it follows you forever. It sticks to your name. It sticks to everyone connected to you, and no amount of statements or paperwork can scrub it clean. The rumor becomes a kind of stain, spreading further the more people try to hide it. Chapter 7. The Threat of the 20 Names. I remember the first time Jaguar Wright said it. She was sitting in that interview chair, leaning forward like she had a secret she wanted to tell but wasn't sure if she should. And then she dropped it casually, almost like it was nothing. There are 20 other men. That's all she said. No names. No context. No details. Just enough to send the internet into a frenzy. At the time, people thought she was exaggerating. Another cryptic soundbite from someone who thrived on stirring things up. But months later, after the raids, after the lawsuits, after whispers about sealed files and clinic records, those 4 words started to feel different. Like maybe she hadn't been bluffing at all. Reddit lit up first. Threads started appearing with titles like the 20 Names and Who's on Diddy's List. At first, they were small. Just a few users tossing out guesses, comparing old photos of Diddy at parties, pulling up snippets of gossip from years ago. But it grew fast. Within days, there were entire spreadsheets circulating online, hundreds of comments deep, ranking celebrities by how likely they were to be one of the 20. It started with the obvious ones, the frequent collaborators, the artists who always seemed to be by his side, the ones with photos and videos linking them directly to his inner circle. But it didn't stop there. People dug through archives, award show seating charts, even random candids of Diddy standing next to actors or athletes at charity events. Suddenly, anyone who'd ever shared a frame with him was suspicious. I saw lists that had rappers, producers, NBA players, A-list actors, even TV hosts. One had a pop star on it just because someone found an old photo of them hugging backstage at a festival. Another had a famous comedian because he'd been spotted at one of Diddy's New Year's parties 10 years ago. It didn't matter how flimsy the connection was. Once a name landed on one of those threads, it stuck. The danger was obvious, but no one seemed to care. Speculation culture thrives on silence, and the celebrities stayed silent. They didn't deny anything, didn't address the lists, didn't even acknowledge the rumors existed, and in that vacuum, the internet filled in the blanks with whatever narrative it wanted. I think about one post in particular that went viral on Twitter. It had 20 names on it, formatted like some leaked government document, complete with fake watermarks and blurred out case numbers. It looked official enough to fool people at first glance. Within hours, it had over 500,000 likes. People were tagging celebrities directly, demanding answers, flooding comment sections with snake emojis and broken heart gifs. By the time fact-checkers pointed out it was fake, the damage was already done. Screenshots had spread everywhere. For a lot of people, those 20 names were already locked in their minds as fact. That's the danger of this kind of speculation. Innocent people get dragged into the fire just because they were there, just because they smiled in a photo, just because they stayed quiet when everyone else was talking. Silence becomes guilt. Association becomes proof. Coincidence becomes evidence. Some of the names were ridiculous. Actors who'd only ever met Diddy once at a movie premiere. Athletes photographed in passing at a nightclub. Producers who worked with him on a single track years ago. But that didn't stop the harassment. People were spamming their socials, accusing them of being on the list, dissecting their medical history like they had a right to know. The longer prosecutors stayed quiet, the worse it got. Every day without an update made the rumor mill spin faster. Fans started asking hard questions. If there really are names tied to medical records, why isn't anyone saying anything? If the files are sealed, is it because the fallout would be too big? Or are they protecting people? People powerful enough to stay hidden while the rest of the world tears itself apart guessing. It's strange how silence can make something feel more real than any confirmation ever could. I started noticing how tabloids were circling too. Headlines started creeping toward the edge, teasing exclusive leaks and sources close to the investigation. Some gossip blogs claimed they were already being offered money for names. Unverified, of course, but believable enough to make people nervous. There were even rumors that certain outlets had quietly bought information just to bury it, to protect advertisers and partnerships tied to the biggest names in Hollywood and sports. That's when I realized this wasn't just another scandal. This was a time bomb. Every day people refresh their feeds waiting for the explosion. It's not even about whether the rumors are true anymore. It's about what happens if those names ever hit the public. Imagine waking up to see your favorite artist trending worldwide, not because of a new album, but because their name's on some leaked infection list. It wouldn't matter if they denied it. It wouldn't matter if they produced proof. The court of public opinion moves faster than facts ever can. I've seen it happen before. One accusation, one whisper, and a career can be over before anyone even gets a chance to defend themselves. But this is bigger than a single name, a single scandal. This is the entire industry under threat. Because if the leaks are real, if there really are 20 names tied to private clinic records, it won't just be Diddy who falls. It'll ripple outward, pulling down everyone connected to him, everyone who ever stepped foot into one of those rooms. That's why people are obsessed. It's not just curiosity, it's fear. Fear of finding out the truth, fear of realizing how deep the connections go, fear of learning that the people we idolize aren't untouchable after all. I've noticed how different the tone online feels lately. It's not just gossip anymore, it's paranoia. Fans side-eyeing old photos, zooming into group shots from past award shows, scrutinizing seating arrangements at charity galas like they're decoding a secret map. Threads go viral every week claiming to have new evidence, and even when they get debunked, they spark 100 more just like them. I keep wondering how long this can last before something breaks. Will prosecutors hold the line forever, or will the pressure get to them? Could someone inside the investigation leak the files? Could a tabloid finally decide the payout is worth the lawsuit risk? Nobody knows. And that's what makes it worse. The idea of the 20 names has become bigger than whatever Jaguar Wright meant when she said it. It's no longer just about her warning or even Diddy's case. It's a symbol now. A symbol of secrets buried so deep that even the people digging them up are afraid to look too closely. And somewhere out there, maybe there is a list. Maybe it's sitting in an evidence locker, locked behind passwords and clearance levels, hidden from everyone but a handful of prosecutors. Or maybe it's just a rumor, a phantom haunting an industry already drowning in scandal. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. The damage is done. Because in the minds of millions of fans, the bomb has already gone off. Chapter 8. Infection as Legacy. It's strange how the story has changed. In the beginning, it was just about Diddy. The parties, the freak-offs, the abuse allegations, the raids. It was wild enough on its own, but somewhere along the way something shifted. It stopped being about what he did and became about what might have happened to everyone around him. The whispers about infections, about sealed files, about secret names. They've grown into something bigger than the facts. It's not even about proof anymore. It's about possibility. That's the thing about rumors like this. They don't need to be true to take hold. They spread anyway, attaching themselves to people and refusing to let go. Once a name is tied to the idea of being on the list, that's it. There's no coming back from that. It doesn't matter what you say, what you show, what papers you wave around. You can deny it until your voice gives out, but the seed is already planted. In someone's mind, you'll always be one of them. And that's what makes this so dangerous. The infection isn't just biological. It's reputational. Look at Cassie. Her pain is real. Her medical suffering is documented, sealed into testimonies and filings that no one can erase. The recurring infections, the doctor visits, The endless cycle of being pushed past her limits. That's all there, locked into the record. And yet, somehow, even her reality gets swallowed by the rumor. People read her words and connect them to Jaguar rights claims, to whispers about hidden clinic records, to those 20 phantom names. Her story isn't just her own anymore. It's been folded into this bigger, darker narrative, where every detail fuels a collective paranoia. And Jaguar, she's the ghost that lingers over all of this. There was a time when everyone laughed at her. Conspiracy theorist, they called her. Attention seeker. Now, clips of her interviews circulate like prophecies, every soundbite treated like a puzzle piece that might unlock some bigger truth. Her talk about Diddy being undetectable, about the music industry being an HIV closet. People used to dismiss it, but now it feels like a warning we ignored. Even Aaron Rodgers of all people found his way into this tangled mess. That one podcast appearance, just a few lines about powerful people staying silent, was enough to shift the narrative entirely. Suddenly, silence doesn't look neutral anymore. It looks complicit. Every celebrity who ever stood next to Diddy and hasn't said a word since the raids now carries that weight. Fans interpret their quiet as fear, or guilt, or both. And maybe that's why this story refuses to die. The prosecution hasn't released anything. No names, no test results, no documents confirming a thing. But it doesn't matter. The absence of answers has created its own ecosystem of speculation. People are obsessed with filling the blanks. They build lists, dissect old photos, connect dots that probably aren't even there. The more the prosecutors stay silent, the more the internet writes its own version of the truth. It's gotten to the point where the rumor itself feels more real than anything in court. I keep thinking about how infection works, how something invisible spreads, person to person, without you even realizing it. That's what this is. The gossip moves the same way. One thread turns into 10. One YouTube video turns into hundreds of TikToks. One soundbite turns into 1,000 memes. By the time you try to trace it back, it's already everywhere, impossible to contain. And that's the legacy this leaves behind, whether anyone likes it or not. Even if no one on that so-called list is actually infected, the rumor has already done its damage. Careers are shifting under its weight. Collaborations are dying in silence. People are watching old interviews differently now, scrutinizing smiles and handshakes, replaying award show clips like crime scene footage. It doesn't matter if there's no proof. It doesn't matter if the sealed files never see daylight. Because the idea is enough. I go back to Cassie again, because she's the reminder that all of this isn't just theater. Whatever else is rumor, her pain is real. Her body carries scars the rest of the world can only guess at, and she's not the only one. Behind the headlines, there are people who lived through nights we'll never understand. People who walked out of those hotel rooms carrying things they didn't choose, things they can't undo. But the industry doesn't want to talk about that. They want silence. NDAs, settlements, closed doors and sealed files. They want it contained, kept tidy and controlled, so the rest of the world never really knows. Only it's too late for that now. Jaguar's words hang over everything. Rodgers' accusations hang over everything. Every sealed document, every blurred rumor, every whispered warning from years ago. It's all out there, swirling in this constant, unstoppable storm. And the truth is, it doesn't even matter if the prosecution ever speaks. The damage is already permanent. Because once your name gets whispered in this context, it never comes back clean. It sticks, no matter how many times you deny it. Sponsors don't forget. Fans don't forget. The internet definitely doesn't forget. It's like a scar that keeps reopening every time someone reposts an old clip or finds a photo you'd forgotten about. A rumor like this doesn't just follow you. It becomes you. Sometimes I wonder what happens if the files really do get unsealed. Does the world implode in outrage, or does everyone just nod like they already knew? Does it vindicate the gossip, or prove everyone wrong? Does it even matter? Because in a way, we're already living in the aftermath. The suspicion's already spread, the infection's already out there, And no court ruling, no press statement, no carefully worded denial is ever going to take that back. That's the part no one wants to admit. This story stopped being about facts a long time ago. Whether the list exists or not, the idea of it is enough. The prosecution may never read those names aloud in court, but online, the infection has already spread. And in Hollywood, some stains never wash off.